thank you all. Thank you for having me here to moderate your crossfire. I will not waste any of your time in any of my lectures, but get straight into the topic, which is development sustains pollution. Must we defile to go the extra mile? First of all, let me congratulate all you students for picking such an appropriate and timely subject for your college discussion. I can think of many more that would have been picked up, but would not have the conscience of our development model jolted the way maybe this discussion needs to. So thanks for that. I'll introduce the panel in no particular order other than how they fall on my sheets of paper. First, I'd like to welcome Mr. Anoop Poonia. Anoop. Here he comes. Anoop is a program officer from Climate Action Network, CAN. Hi Anoop, please have a seat. They work on low carbon and climate resilient development and climate finance frameworks in India. As the coordinator of CAN, which now has 950 NGOs associated with it, and its global network is spread over 100 countries, or is that 150? 100. You need to use the mic. 100 countries. Mr. Poonia facilitates policy positions and advocacy strategies for its climate finance working group. He is also the former president of the Indian Youth Climate Network, and they actually did something really interesting which you students will find interesting. He was part of the launch of a national movement on climate change in India, when a team of young people drove from Chennai to Delhi in solar-powered cars or electric cars, the Reva, and a band performed which was powered by the sun as well. So how does a band perform powered by the sun work? The electric guitar is like solar-powered?
Yeah, so all their equipment was powered by solar batteries, and they were carrying their equipment all through with them. But one thing we missed mentioning was that we also had a biodiesel truck going along with us. So because the equipment was huge, so we put some of that in the biodiesel truck.
Interesting.
And wherever they played, they didn't use electricity. They used electricity from the sun, but not the regular.
Nice. Our next panelist is Mr. Nawshir Mirza. Mr. Mirza, could you please come on stage? He is an extremely interesting and witty young man, as I learnt in the green room. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He was a partner of S.R. Bartley Boy and Company, Calcutta. He is an independent director on the boards of Thermax India, Tata Power, and Exide. So Exide the battery, Tata Power is a power company, and Thermax does what, sir?
One of the things Thermax does is to make boilers, heat exchangers, and all the other technical stuff that goes with managing heat.
So while his resume suggests he works with the industry that contribute to pollution, whether it is power, whether it is boilers, he is the insider, he is the mole from the outside in there, not to shut the company down, but to transform them to eco-friendly companies. So I believe we'll see. Our third panelist is a young achiever, or I'd say a young super achiever. She's winner of the Green Oscar, and she's a conservation biologist. She's an environmental journalist and the author of Green Wars, Bahar Dutt. Bahar, can we please have you on stage? So Bahar has devoted the last 15 years to working on key environmental issues. She's also worked as an environmental editor with India's CNN-IBN. That's a news channel, as many of you know. And now she writes a column for The Mint. Her most distinguished accolade remains her Wildscreen Award. She won the Green Oscar in 2005 for her report, The Last Dance of the Saras, and that's a book too. It's part of a book. And that book is available. Actually, she'll be signing copies outside. So after this, if any of you want signed copies of the book, you can grab those. So,
Thanks.
I found out just before this that you become a conservation biologist by actually studying something. So, how difficult is it to be a conservation biologist?
It is difficult. We study wild animals.
Okay.
And real wild animals, not the wild human beings.
Right.
So, but it's a lot of fun. I ended up chasing monkeys in a zoo for my thesis. So if any of you want to do that, conservation biology is the subject for you.
Well, it's more interesting than economics that I studied, I can tell you for
I'd
sure.
just like to add, when you introduced me, my claim to fame is not just getting the one award, but we, through our reporting, actually managed to save the habitat of that particular bird, which is the Sarus crane.
Right.
So I consider that to be my great achievement.
And I was also told before this that it is the tallest flying bird.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Now our next panelist is an extremely distinguished scientist, Dr. P. Chellapandi. Dr. Chellapandi, can we please have you on stage? He began his career at the Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research. Hi, please have a seat. So he began his career at IGCAR in 1979 and specialized in design, analysis and qualification of nuclear reactor components. He went on to become the director of the reactor engineering group till 2015 and then was appointed the chairman and MD of India's fast breeder nuclear reactor power company, Bharatiya Nabhikiya Vidyut Nigam Limited. And in fact, he's the first person from IGCAR to head a nuclear power company. He also, in fact, you're the architect of a commercial sized fast breeder reactor, is that right? Yes. And it's going to be commissioned later this year. Could you just tell us?
Yeah.
So, and it will be producing 500 megawatts of power?
Yes.
Is it the first?
This is the first of this size.
It's the first of this size in India. Okay. And you were the architect of that. You're an IIT alumnus, IIT Chennai alumnus. And he is a professor at the Homi Bhabha Institute, an adjunct professor at the PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore, and at Satyabama University, Chennai. Is that right? That's a huge resume. So we have a nuclear scientist among us. And finally, I'd like to call on stage Dr. A. Ravindra. Hi, doctor, please come. Dr. Ravindra holds a PhD degree in development studies. He joined the IAS, the Indian Administrative Service, in 1965. He served in various capacities with the government. He was a deputy commissioner, he was secretary to the government of various departments, and he retired as chief secretary to the government of Karnataka in the end of 2002. Dr. Ravindra was responsible for introducing several governance reforms, such as rationalizing property tax system through the self-assessment scheme, which is very popular in Bangalore, I believe. He played a pioneering role in promoting civic awareness among citizens through Swabhimana, a platform of resident welfare associations, NGOs, and also city corporations, which must be quite a task, getting city corporations to work with RWAs. Was it? Was it difficult?
Yeah, it's certainly very different.
Okay, lots of combat there.
Government, as you know, doesn't trust non-government, and non-government doesn't trust the government.
So there's always combat.
I'd like to.
And also currently he heads the Center for Sustainable Development. It's a not-for-profit, and his latest initiative is setting up the Smart Cities India Foundation, where I just found out while speaking to him earlier, he's trying to redefine smart cities, or let me put it this way, that smart cities means different things to different people. In his view, there are many indigenous technologies that we can use to make cities smart. Is that right? It's not only about using Western technology.
That's right, that's right. Absolutely.
Okay, let me start off with the insider on the outside or the outsider on the inside. I'll like to break this discussion into 3 parts. I'll just tell all of you that so we know where we're coming from, and I hope you've understood where our panel is coming from. Climate change or environmental sustainability is one of the biggest challenges of our time. The ones we on the other side of 40 have lived our lives running around and playing in streams and rivers. You guys can't do that. When I was young, we could drink water from any tap and any stream. You guys drink bottled water. So for you, it's a bigger challenge than it has been for any generation before you. So we break it down. Who holds the burden? Is it the Western world or is it the developed world vis-a-vis the developing world? Because we pay a bigger price. Either way, as sufferers of climate change or in fighting it, which means we push development on the back seat. The second part of the discussion will be rich versus poor. Are the poor subsidizing our lifestyles of the rich? And the third part will be indigenous technologies, how they can help us be smarter and more environmentally friendly. You said I shouldn't call you Mr. Mirza.
Nawshir.
So I will call you Mr. Mirza. Okay, Nawshir. The industry as and I'm not putting this on you, the blame on you, but since you are on the boards of various companies, it would be nice to know how they think, because the argument is always that if you want development, if you want to move forward, and development means higher GDP, more manufacturing, more consumption, you have to put environment on the back seat. Do you think that is way too selfish and way too profit driven, where that comes from, as the industry as a whole is concerned?
Abhinandan, see, we are all part of the capitalist system, and no amount of pleading to people's good sense, sense of fair play, fairness, can take us away from the simple fact that the guy who pays the money calls the tune, pays the piper calls the tune. And as long as we are part of the capitalist economy, and I spent 21 years in Calcutta. I was there when the Naxalite movement first began. So if I speak a little like a lefty, you will understand why I am like that. I was there in the worst years of leftist violence in Calcutta. So it is a fact that as long as you are harnessed to that system, you will not be able to break away from it. So if I sit on the board of a power company and we put, I guess, about 20 million tons of carbon dioxide into the air every year through the thermal power stations we have. So it's a lot of carbon dioxide, lots. The fact of the matter is we have taken money from people to build those plants, and the people who have given us the money want a return. And they say the law puts us preeminent amongst all the other stakeholders in your business. You may say there are important stakeholders. You may say the community is important, future generations are important. That's all well and good. What's the law? The law says the shareholder, the giver of money, is preeminent. He determines what the corporation does. So that is the real challenge we are faced with. And there's something further I'll add later on, Abhinandan, but I've said this.
I'll just take it to the extreme right, and I mean just direction-wise. While I understand that corporation's primary duty is to maximize value for his shareholder, is nuclear technology where that interest and the environmental interest comes together? And if so, why are some countries in the West moving away from it?
Regarding a corporation for the nuclear power, we have to divide into various phases. We have not reached a situation where all the more it is becoming very commercial, because the technology has not become very much transparent between one country to another country. So all the more we should see that as far as India is concerned, it's strongly depending upon availability of resources, nuclear fuel. The policy and other mechanisms to increase the profit, to attract the public, as far as India is concerned, has to be seen with reference to the climate change, the pride for the technology, and more than that, long-term sustainability. If you see the nuclear power, today what you feel is expensive, it's very difficult to attract. But thanks to the recent, the emphasis on the climate change has pushed us to go for nuclear power, Because you know in a simple language, a few grams of a fuel can replace a huge tons of coal. And the technology what we are thinking in terms of a second phase in Indian context, nothing is waste, which is talked as the negative aspect of the nuclear power. They are recycling. Nowadays, this is the reactor called breeder. You are recycling it. Ultimately, what you are going to give to the society, you take a little fuel, little resource, and you are not going to dump anything in a static condition or stationary situation, and you are going to give only power.
Right.
You are going to give only power, and whatever waste, what you call waste, is not a waste. You are going on putting in the reactor itself.
So you make it sound really environmentally friendly. Bahar, if I could come to you, are you convinced, because after what happened in Japan, there is a kind of a movement that it is not as rosy as it seems to be in nuclear power. The risk, it may not pollute on a daily basis as much as coal does, but when it goes wrong, it goes so horribly wrong that the risk reward isn't worth it. You can just answer that question, and then the next part of it, what you said that you want to talk about in the background, that environment is not just climate change.
Fair enough. I know nuclear is a very contentious subject, and us environmentalists are always thought to be anti-nuclear. But I'd just like to say right now that the crisis we are facing right now is not about whether our source of energy is coming from nuclear or thermal. I want to put this crisis in a larger picture. So I'm going to take this a little bit a step back and just make this more basic. And I want to just ask this audience here, how many of you love nature? Yeah. And how many on this panel love nature?
Sure I do.
Okay. So I think we're agreed on the fact that the love of nature is intrinsic in all of us. And somehow, the moment we say environmentalism, we either think of ourselves as capitalists or leftists, industrialists, environmentalists, and we start getting these categories. But I'd like to start at a very basic level and think that we all love nature, we all love green spaces, open skies, blue skies, clean air. So if we start at that fundamental level, there is no difference between the nuclear scientist, the thermal power person, the climate change activist, the smart cities person. We all are aspiring for the same goal, which is a better environment. So if we're agreed on that, I think the crossfire can go in a very good direction. But just to, again, very quickly set the context of what I see the challenge today, is that what does a policeman do? A policeman regulates traffic. India right now has a very strong regulatory framework in terms of our environment laws. And what those environment laws do is not hinder development. They make sure that the accidents don't happen. They make sure that there is a regulatory framework. They don't promote license Raj. So I'd just like to look at data. Right now, we have a 95% clearance rate as far as our Ministry of Environment and Forest is concerned. India right now, despite all that we are saying that environmentalists block development, is one of the easiest countries to come in and do business. Whether it is in terms of getting permissions to set up a factory, and I'm talking from the environment point
of view. And this figure is from what years?
This figure is from the Ministry of Environment and Forest, and it doesn't matter whether it was the UPA or the NDA. It has remained standard.
So it's standard
so
across
I am
years,
not saying
95%.
That this political party was bad for the environment.
So you're saying
all of them have been bad.
95%
consistently 95%. 300 acres of forest every day are diverted for roads, highways, thermal power plants, malls. This is data from the government. This is not my data. So we are destroying everything around us at such a fast rate, 95% clearance rate. I don't know what else can save the planet.
Okay, thanks. I'll just give you something to think about. So when I come back to you, you can answer that. While it's okay for all of us to say we love nature, and who doesn't? It's like all of us saying we love freedom, and everyone does. But when an emergency is imposed, there are human beings who implement it. There are human beings who make it happen. So while everyone loves nature, what is your top priority? Is your top priority listening to an order? Is your top priority maximizing profit? Is your top priority taking your share value up? That may be your primary directive. So not everybody is on the same page and cannot be. So while it could be a priority, it may not be your top priority. Your life choices are determined by your top priority. So how do we resolve that? So I'll just come on this side. Sir, this developed world versus developing world, are we responsible, I mean, should we take on the onus of conforming to certain norms of pollution or emission? Like in Paris, much of the media celebrated as some kind of victory, but most environmentalists trashed it, saying we didn't get any binding promises from the developing world, whereas there are binding promises on us because Euro 3, Euro 4, we conform to all those. How realistic are indigenous technologies to actually make a significant difference in climate change in your smart city study that you're doing?
Well, first of all, let me say there is a distinction between the role of developed countries and developing countries. In this entire debate about climate change, for years it has focused on that, because the argument is that the developed countries, US, UK, say Western Europe, have been responsible for most part of the pollution, the carbon emissions, etc., and they need to take the greater responsibility. That is point number one. Now, so far as we are concerned, the less developed countries, including India, see, we are still on the development path. See, I mean, the point was made that we all love nature. Certainly, I mean, nobody says we don't love nature. But how much of nature is to be exploited for development? And this is the big debate. All along the progress of science and technology, if you take, it is by exploiting nature. So now we have reached a stage where we feel that the resources that that are getting depleted are not being replaced, to the extent that they are getting depleted, and therefore whether it is temperature rise, fossil fuels, etc., so on and so forth. So, to your specific question about what's the role to be played by countries like India, indigenous technologies and all that. Again, there is that debate between whether it should be more of mitigation or more of adaptation technologies. Both are required in order to contain the damages of climate change and then contain the GHG emissions. It is said, and we usually advocate more of adaptation, because mitigation would certainly mean more of stress on our development, and that's the thing. But there are certain indigenous technologies, which we can use and we have been using, but I think we need to again renew ourselves. For instance, you just take a thing like waste. For instance, in cities, enormous amount of waste is produced because of more and more consumption. Indian cities themselves produce or generate about 70 million tons of waste every year. So disposal of waste, that the waste also causes pollution. It's
Sure.
not merely the gases produced by the automobiles. So there, for ages we have been having this technology of converting, solid waste or organic waste into manure. But now, we find a lot of foreign companies, foreign consultants coming and telling us, you don't know how to manage your waste, which should be converted into energy. And they want to put up very costly plants. It has not really succeeded in most of the places. So this is one thing, now, for instance, in Bangalore, we are setting up a number of processing plants, mainly just converting organic waste into manure. And that manure in turn certainly is going to be useful for horticulture, for even agriculture and so on. That is one. I'll give you another small example of how we are ourselves, in a way, obscure to our own strengths in indigenous technology. Recently, I was invited to a conference by an Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce. They were again talking about sustainable development, and they said, we are going to bring sustainable construction technology to India. And he was explaining and making a presentation, and he said this type of bricks, which he showed, he said this is sustainable and it shall last longer than your bricks and all that. Then I asked him, what is the raw material? Out of what have you made this new brick? To my shock, he said, it is just local cow dung. Cow dung has been a technology we have been using for ancient times for houses and all that. The flooring was entirely cow dung. So we have not been able to exploit our own strengths, our own knowledge, even in health.
Why do you think that is?
Pardon?
Why do you think that is?
Why? That is because, again, the invasion of Western technology. We certainly need Western technology. There's no doubt about that, whether it's nuclear technology or anything. But at the same time, because of our fascination for transfer of technology on everything, now we have not been able to use our own indigenous knowledge and technologies to the extent that they can. I'm not saying that's going to solve all the problems. What we need today is a kind of marriage between modern Western technology and indigenous technology.
Right.
And we should use what is really suitable to us, to our environment. So including we speak about green buildings today. Vastu is nothing but is a kind of a green building concept which was there, which said, we allow air to come naturally, sunlight to come naturally. So you're automatically using less of electrical energy.
Right. In fact, I saw that, Anoop, you actually consult on policy on climate. One, if you could weigh in on this Western world versus the developing world, or the developing world versus the developed world, who is more responsible, or who is being more rigid on this? But more importantly, could you comment on this entire indigenous technologies thing and how much R&D from a person who works in policy point of view, and I'm assuming you consult not just with government but also with private organizations on policy on climate. How much R&D is actually going into this? Like, I know in the West, a lot of universities, have major research projects in a variety of areas, in manufacturing, in science, technology, medicine. I'm not aware of any such huge research happening in Indian universities. And if they aren't doing it, and if corporate India isn't doing it, who will do it?
Well, let me say that the entire game between developed and developing countries, the rich and the poor, is nothing but a game of chess. Okay? Whether you see how it was happening in December in Paris in the climate change conference, on the one side there were 195 countries who agreed to take action on climate change, global warming and associated risks. But how in those 2 weeks countries reached that point? There was a lot of strategizing happening. And who's winning? Do I need to tell?
Well, they are,
okay,
for now.
So they are way ahead in terms of A, securing the fort, and B, buying enough time to go from point A to B when they need to be as per their choice. When they need to go there, how they need to go there, at what pace will they go there. So they are playing the game to be ahead of us all the time. And we are losing important time and our important resources in most of the time coping with whatever games they are throwing at us, and also coping with our limited resources in comparison to their resources. So in a way, to put in short, yes, the developed world is way ahead. Everybody knows the story of how they came in and patented the things that were always belonging to us.
Neem, basmati.
Yeah, and more. And all the research that you talked about, whether it's indigenous or anything else, it's all happening there. Or happening here in collaboration with them.
But is blaming them enough? What are we doing? What are our universities doing? What is corporate India doing?
We are thanking them. We are thanking them for coming into our country and providing us with all the resources and the knowledge that they bring, and enabling us to work on our own resources in collaboration with them. We are thanking them.
So then we can't really blame them, right?
And even in Paris, we saw a lot of the poor island nations and developing countries who don't have the resources sidelining with the rich countries to form a high ambition coalition, which basically There goes the crossfire.
There goes Crossfire. Okay. Huh.
Sorry, it's not a comment on the organizers. Some things happen like this, so it's fine. We can go ahead. So there were these small nations who were sidelining with, they were coaxed into sidelining with the rich nations because they thought they'll get something out of this.
Did they?
They sold out, in my own view.
Did they get anything?
I don't think so.
I'd like to just
Sure.
sort of interject here. I mean, yes, climate change has become about developed versus developing, but I think we need to look at it from our point of view. Look what happened in Chennai. Everyone was talking about the fact that, okay, it was bad planning, but there was also the fact that there was excessive rain that day. Was it caused due to climate change? So I think we need to look at our own story and how it's going to affect us. And I think there are a lot of interesting things happening in India right now. There's 100 corporates that have come forward and said that in the next 10 years, they are going to switch to renewables. So I think, I mean, as an environmentalist, I have criticized corporates many times, but there are many corporates who are coming forward and saying, let's switch to renewable energy. So I think these are interesting initiatives which are happening. There's a person, there's an organization in Bihar, for instance, who's providing renewable energy sources to poor people. And it is being done just with the waste from agricultural produce, which is rice husk. So I think these are the efforts which will take us towards low carbon growth, and we need to move away from business as usual. So for instance, look at this hall and all the energy that we're consuming here. And I'd like to just say this, I'm not criticizing the organizers in any way. The school I came from was exactly like this. But can we think differently? Can we think of powering this hall with renewable energy? So I think these are the ways forward, and that's what we need to focus on.
Okay, now anyone can come in. Yes, sir, please do come in. And if you could also just weigh in on is enough risk assessment done, whether it's nuclear, because you have worked with the establishment, is the focus so single-mindedly on growth and development that sustainability environment is not even an option? How much assessment is done on that, in your experience?
Just I would comment about indigenization, a few words about nuclear industry. It is actually, today's contest. It's not the past. Today's contest in the indigenization is becoming, we should take very judicious choice for us. I'll tell you a reason. When India, India is China is going to be a massive countries which is going to produce a lot of pollution. If you see even the per capita energy consumption is small, but total energy what we produce, what pollution, you may be well aware of that. So internationally, people are wanting that India should develop a technology which has to give a very less pollution, so that internationally people will be safe. So they doesn't want India or China, or I can say rather, they encourage us to develop this technology, and they are coming forward. At the same time, as far as we are concerned, we have to choose indigenization. Definitely we have to choose for the two reasons. Because in the past we suffered. Initially technology came to us as a hand in our hand. But today, again it is coming back to us. People are coming forward to support. For one reason is to see that this technology comes, probably India may reduce the use of coal and other fossil materials, resources, so that the pollution will be less. At the same time, there is a vested interest among the countries. In a long run, the generation 4, whole Europeans or Western countries are working, including Americans, to see that this technology can be captured for the commercial or for their own business opportunities, to enhance the business opportunity. So they also want to contribute to India, which has got a lot of nuclear program, like China, India is today, ASEAN countries. These are the two countries. So what I want to say is they want to collaborate with us. They want to give some sort of essential items to India, including, that they are ready for giving several things just to see the business opportunity. Second thing is to see that the pollution will be minimized. They have nuclear is the better option.
But
as far as we are concerned, we have to choose carefully because later course we should not get technological denial and we should not suffer. So, as far as the Department of Atomic Energy is concerned, we are carefully choosing a path to enhance your program rapidly, take technology, at the same time, if this technology denial is there, we won't suffer back. That's what I want to add. So,
Right.
we have to have indigenization, must. But at the same time, something's available for rapid growth, we have to use it. This is what. Then regarding your risk, I'll tell you,
1 second, if I could
Yeah.
just go to Nawshir 1 second. You know, Nawshir, we've discussed a lot on nuclear, on renewable energy, 100 corporates having committed whatever they have committed, and at the risk of sounding too cynical, the commitments at the Vibrant Gujarat and what actually happened was very, very far, and what is committed and what is executed is not always very close. We can discuss about renewals, we can discuss about all that happened, but you sit on the board of 3 very influential, powerful companies, and be as honest as you possibly can. How close are their actual plans of growth to these kind of discussions? How many times are renewables really discussed in boardrooms?
Well, Abhinandan, before I answer your question, and I'll answer it with complete candor, I'm not a guy who glosses over things. I just want to make one point. The reason we are blaming the developed world and all that, but Bahar made this point before we came in here. Look within yourselves. We are hiding behind the 400 million poor Indians who don't consume almost any power. So all of you and all of us are consuming as much power as the average American. So it is within you and it's within us to reduce our consumption. Not the consumption only of electricity. Of course you must reduce the consumption. You must reduce the consumption of everything. Because everything that you consume needs power and natural resources to manufacture. So the solution lies within all of you. All of us are shielded by these 400 million Indians who are consuming maybe 50 units of power in a year. So the average for India is 600 units.
Sorry to interrupt, you can continue after that, but will that not slow down growth?
You want me to answer the question? Okay,
No, but on this, will that not slow down growth? Because our growth is purely based on
Yeah.
consumption.
Of course it will slow down growth. See, there is this obsession with growth. That's a capitalist obsession. There I am going again. It's a capitalist obsession that growth is the solution to everything. Now, in the natural world, there is only one organism that grows for the sake of growth. The cancer cell.
Can I just make a point on this?
One second.
So, the capitalist system and our government will say GDP will be 7.5, 8.5, whatever. So one side, the government is saying we must grow. The other side, they are saying we should become green. There is a complete contradiction. I never believe politicians will tell you the truth. So forget these politicians, what they say. The solution lies with all of you and all of us here.
Okay, Mr. Ravindra
Yeah,
wants to come in.
certainly-
So just a second, you could answer that question. How many times are renewables discussed in boardrooms?
Okay. See, you have
Never.
to select your company. What I'm going to say is not typical of the corporate world because I only join companies which will have a nutcase like me on their boards. So most companies won't. So I'm not on those companies and there's such a thing. But in the boards where I am on, not only am I a very loud voice in this, I'll tell you, the head of Tata Power is Tata is Cyrus Mistry, and he's also the chairman of Tata Power. So he sits next to me in the boardroom. So
No, actually, okay.
if I just finish, I was going on about this last meeting. He sort of touched me on the arm and said softly, "Nawshir, you're one of those environmentalists. Ne? I'm glad you are because you can say these things. As the chair of the company, he can hardly start saying we shouldn't do this because then the management will be completely confused."
Sure.
So there is a strong feeling today in the better companies. And so both the companies, Tata Power and Thermax, I think are looking in the next 10 years to have no more of fossil fuel based generation of power in Tata Power and manufacture of boilers for
Wow.
fossil.
If that can happen, I'd be
Yeah,
impressed.
but Abhinandan, don't credit them. They're thinking of this because, see, any of these boilers you make, they have a life of 40 to 50 years at least. Indeed, they will go on for 100 years if you maintain them. So there may not be a market 50 years from now. So quite selfishly, these companies have decided that after 10 years, we'll not make any more. But that means for another 60 years, you will still have pollution at 20 million tons
Okay,
of carbon.
that is,
No,
as
what-
candidates, you can, Dr.
Yeah,
Ravindra,
I
you were
think
saying.
what my friend says is valid, but it is an irony that a capitalist, without answering directly the question posed by the moderator, has been expatiating on the benefits of renewable energy. This is what we should do. But are the companies, the capitalists really doing this? That's the question. You are wasting a lot of resources. But at the same time, your earlier observation that we are living in a capitalist economy. Actually, we are juggling between a capitalist economy and socialist economy, both. So, the free
Right.
market is one thing. At the same time, we also cannot give up our socialist ideas and all. So, in practice, I agree. I mean, both the points made that the initiative should come from the citizens, from institutions, from homes. It's a renewable energy. I mean, use renewable energy instead of this. I keep saying this whenever I particularly go to conference in 5-star hotels, where during the daytime bright lights are used. Similarly, water. You take how much of water we waste. Rainwater harvesting is something that should come here along with your renewable energy. And one thing we can do, for instance, so far as saving water is concerned, 5-star hotels, these tub bars. When ordinary poor people, have to probably travel miles in order to fetch a pail of water. Here, gallons and gallons of water are being given to the rich. And today, I think, interestingly, yesterday's economic survey mentions about subsidizing the rich
Yes,
in the
I
name of
saw.
subsidizing the poor.
Right.
To what extent that will get translated in the budget, that we must see.
But Dr. Ravindra, I'll just ask you one more question and then Anoop can come in. We've heard the private sector, there are some who want to do things, for some reasons they can't. There's, share capital, there's how the stock market would react. You've been a career, bureaucrat. You've been there for the longest time and you've held the position of the secretary to the government. I mean, you're the chief secretary. How serious is the government? Because if anything has to really happen, the government can make it happen, right? So while a company, and we should not grudge the company that, because that is why it exists. It exists to maximize value for a shareholder. Any sort of compliance, any sort of regulation has to come from the government. In your experience with the government, and now you can talk because you're retired, as I have noticed many World Bank economists, after they retire, they talk about how destructive their policies were. When they're in service, they don't have a problem with what the World Bank does. Similarly, now you can tell us, how serious is the government? Forget the private sector.
Yeah, I think this question is often asked, and then whatever a retired person says, it becomes difficult if you start criticizing the government. The question is asked, what were you doing when you were in the government? But let me answer your question because it's important. See, all said and done, in India, the state plays a big role. It is a very important factor. However much when we talk about privatization, private sector coming in and all that, it wields enormous power. And as you said, it certainly frames a lot of policies and programs aimed at the welfare of the poor, development of the country, whether it is agriculture, industry, whatever it is, regulations, the required laws, regulations, etc. I think the really important thing, where we falter is that although many of the times we find the policies are good by themselves, it is the implementation that things go wrong. I mean that, even within government we feel, those at the higher level, the implementation part it becomes extremely...
I just like...
There are reasons for that. Okay,
Just
I'll
a second,
respond to
Bahar. You could finish. Anoop has something to say, then
finish.
we'll come to Bahar. Yeah, Anoop.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just make one last point
yeah,
about
one last
policy and implementation. As somebody said, India is not a failing or failed state. It's a flailing state.
It's sorry?
Flailing, F-L-A-I. The difference is that, it's not like we are progressing, we're doing a lot of things. But here, a failing state means, you have the head, the intellectual, and the policies, everything look very bright and right, but it is not connected properly to the limbs. So the implementation from, Rajiv Gandhi's famous statement that out of 1 rupee spent, only 16 paise goes to the last person. So it is recognized even within government the problems of implementation, and that is what we are struggling with till this day. And it's a new ideas, new policies, bringing in more of the market or the private sector to operate. But there are dilemmas. I think this is the biggest challenge today.
We'll come back to that. Anoop, sorry, you wanted to come in, and then Bahar, you can come to that.
So let me put this out very straight and simple, that where the shift to renewable energy is not really happening out of love for nature. Okay? It's not because of that, it's pure economics. And why it did not, if there was love for nature, then we probably would have had a climate change agreement or better laws 20 years ago. We had it only last year because prices are falling down. Our coal quality domestically is not of great quality. Big hydro is displacing people, and these are our vote banks. So various stakeholders, including government and businesses, are realizing it's not going in their favor. So they need to shift, and they steadily started celebrating their love for nature and started talking about it in the media.
Which is fine as well, as long as democracy makes it happen.
Yeah, but it's happening too late. The science says that we only have 5 years to quadruple, quintuple our action to address climate change, to make it, keep this world livable for us and for them. Only next 5 years. If we are late, we have missed the boat.
Okay, Bahar?
No, I just wanted to come in at that point of what is the government doing. I agree to some extent the implementation is not all right, but we have a fantastic body of environment laws. Right now, there is a move within the government. There's something called the TSR Subramaniam Committee. I don't know if anyone here has heard of it. Basically, this committee was set up by the government to look at dismantling environment laws to make business easy. Now, what did they suggest? That, take for instance, there is a jailer, and it's his job to make sure everyone is in jail. Criminals are in jail. What this committee has suggested is that the polluters will decide how much they are polluting and if they are polluting. So that's like doing away with the policeman or the jailer and saying, you are now free to, you want to stay in jail, you stay in jail. You want to commit a crime, you commit a crime. You will decide whether you are a criminal.
Right.
Now, it is an extremely dangerous move, and it is on paper, it has been suggested by this committee. So I think we need to work towards protecting our existing set of laws. Make it India should not mean pollute in India. I think.
Okay.
Abhinandan.
You were saying yes.
Taking off, in fact, from what Bahar said, many of us feel frustrated, and I started by saying it's a capitalist system, everything works for money. But luckily, 2 years ago, when they amended the Companies Act, they put in, the bureaucrats did this thing, I think a little unthinkingly, because when I've asked them, now they are a little embarrassed about it, but unthinkingly, they've put in a provision in the Companies Act, and listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. It's just one phrase. Bahar, listen. The Companies Act now says that companies shall balance the conflicting interests of all stakeholders. Now, this is a profound statement, and I want to take 3 words out of this statement and just take it to you. The first word is balance. So, it's not enough to say that I respected the environmental laws, that I thought about my vendors and I pay them on time and all. No, I must now establish that I struck a balance between that and the other. So if the Indian refineries are saying that to make, Euro 6 or 7 or something fuel, we'll have to spend 80,000 crores in re-engineering the refineries. So it'll cost lots more. The motor car companies are saying if we make cars that are able to use that kind of fuel, the cars will become costly, customers won't be there. They are striking a balance in their minds in which the shareholder is making his money, never mind the damage to the other stakeholders. So the first requirement is balance. The second is interests. So it's not just rights. Rights are written in the law or they're written in contract. And interest is much more. So going back to the example I just gave, the interest of the citizens of India is to breathe clean air. So that makes you a stakeholder in the refineries and the car companies. Or it's in your interest not to suffer illness. And the law itself presupposes that there will be a conflict, because it says conflicting interests, and there is a conflict.
Inevitably there will
People
be.
try to gloss over this kind of thing and saying,
Sure.
no, we must give a regard. So every one of you in this room, if you see a company that you think is not balancing interests of stakeholders, all you need to do is to write to the board of directors of that company saying, let us know how, according to you, you have struck a balance.
How about that?
No,
Now
no,
that's
that-
news you can use.
Why should we not take you to a magistrate and have you establish in court that you struck that balance, which they will not be able to.
Right.
So now the law has given you a very powerful tool.
Now, I'd like to see how many of you do that. Just a second, Doctor. I just had one question from you. You spoke about the technology we're getting from the West and how, whether it's nuclear, how it's in our interest to use that well, effectively. But you also said we have to be careful because the reason they'll give it to us is their selfish interest. How much, and since you have worked with the premier, on the cutting edge of technology and research in India institutes, what Dr. Ravindra was talking about, how much R&D actually goes into trying to find out our own solutions rather than expecting the West to give us solutions? Is there real, and be as honest as you can, is there any real effort going into research to find solution for ourselves in our own context?
See, it is a compulsion. Any industry, take nuclear or even automobile or even a power industry. Today, the introduction of R&D, it is the compulsion. But at the same time today, we should also see the profit. Company has to survive. Let me take some material development. If you purchase the material, or if you import the material here, and if you develop your own indigenous material through your R&D, the kind of infrastructure today country needs, the time you have to spend is huge. Whereas you can get such a material, such a technology quickly available from other country, you can introduce. Whereas certain industry, the R&D introduction is a must. For example, for us it's a must. Nobody will do kind of research because you know that nuclear industry in other countries are slowed down, it is postponed. Rather, I can say it's a postponed. Today you want to develop more nuclear power because there is a compulsion for us, we need R&D. So I can say in this audience, we need a quantum of R&D to make our reactor, rather than safe, it has to be economic today. Because as a company, I am feeling that we spend a lot of capital cost. You know that our nuclear power is a capital cost. We are spending so much money for initial investment is very high. Though the running cost is very small, practically you don't feel. So now we need, as a person sitting in the academic institution, I can motivate the people, development of new material, optimizing the entire concept, and bring down the material consumption, and see that how many industries, many of the Indian industry want to adopt the existing technology. Even though there are a lot of computer simulation, they don't adopt. Even if
Why?
Why? Because they don't adopt, because the simple reason is the maturity of our, some of the technology, the Indian technology has not gone to the professionalism. The professionalism is missing in our
So it is still not up to the mark.
Yeah, I won't say up to the mark, the professionalism is missing. For example, let me take, you purchase your technology from the institute as developed and given to you, I have to work with the system, I cannot sleep in the house. Whereas we purchase an equipment, equivalent equipment, I can sleep peacefully. There are certain things has to be added. I can say as a professor working with many institutes, many students, they don't go to the professionalism to the technology, India's technology.
Do
I
you think
can
it's
say
a cultural thing?
The reason is they have to go to the ultimatum they are not seeing. What they say, they give the product, and we are missing a small small scale industries, the link of industries who can convert, who can convert this technology from the institute to the commercial value and professionalism is missing in the Indian condition. So I can take a liberty to tell here, please, the industries should come forward to introduce professionalism in the technology developed by the institutes.
I see.
No, I just about nuclear technology, I would like to ask one question. See, all said and done, nuclear technology or nuclear power today contributes just about 3% or 4%. Is the total share of the energy. I mean, this is an important point to note. Whereas a country like Germany has now said we will not go in for, they are shutting down their nuclear plants. And their solar energy is increasing, and ultimately they want to have the maximum use of solar energy. Why can't a country like India, with much more sun power or sunlight than a country like Germany or anywhere in Europe, adopt more of renewable energy, solar energy? And why do you go in for such costly source of power like nuclear energy at all? It is capital intensive, and you know there is an element of that risk. What happened in Japan?
Sorry, but isn't that true for solar as well? Isn't that very expensive in install?
No,
even solar is
prices have come down by more than 80% in the last 5 years.
Okay.
And in the context of nuclear energy, you have to apply the 80-20 principle. How much you invest and how much you get in return.
Okay.
In the context of limited money that we have, the other challenges that we have with such mega projects. But this also needs to be seen in the larger context of what I wanted to say earlier also about growth and fascination for growth. See, that is the only system we know. And as long as that's the only way we know and we don't have a solution, an alternative to it, we cannot blame nuclear or anything else because everything becomes relevant because growth is endless for us. And there would be a time when we'll reach the maximum for solar and the maximum for wind and the maximum for hydro, and we will again come back to nuclear. If we shut it down now, even then we'll come back to it now, again and later. So the fascination for growth and no alternative to it is where the thought has not gone. And it's a simple example. If I ask you 10 times to not do something and not give you a reason or a solution to it, you will not stop doing it. So that's the same way we have with growth. Unless I give you a solution for endless growth and whatever comes with it as a package, you will not want to stop.
But it need not
growing.
be endless. Just to play the devil's advocate, how important growth is to India. It is not that important to say the US or to Germany or to Japan. You know, Japan can go into negative growth as well. They don't have to pull people out of poverty. America doesn't have to pull people out of poverty. I mean, I'll give you an example. In America, climate change is an election issue. How many people here think climate change will be an election issue in the next election? Can I just have a show of hands? Well, 2 out of 600. How many think climate change will be an election issue 2 elections from now?
No, but
5.
when
How
let
many-
climate change hit, it
Sorry?
will be an election issue. I mean, what happened in Chennai floods,
Yes.
are you going to say it's not climate change? I don't
no,
agree.
But
I
how
don't
you,
know
one
whether
sec,
it is
how you
climate
position
change.
is, but how you
I
position
think we haven't raised the awareness that it's climate change.
No,
No,
see,
no,
That's the
no,
problem.
that's
Where-
different
where-
thing. We create the. I'm saying, for it to be an election issue, by default, any externality eventually finds its way into the economy. It finds its way into the balance sheet. But unless it is positioned as an election issue, what the point I was making was,
I can tell you the Aam Aadmi Party is now tom-tomming in Delhi that the pollution issue was tackled by them thanks to odd even. It's the one success they're highlighting in Delhi right now. It's the one thing which got them, recently when the poll was done, everyone felt the Aam Aadmi Party had done very well as far as tackling pollution was done.
do you think it will be an
I mean,
election?
it can become an election issue, it's just that we're not
I'm just
thinking
saying,
about it.
here there are 5 people who think it will be an election issue even 2 elections from now. Do you realistically think it will be an election issue?
Of about 400 million people who need to be pulled out of poverty, and would that be an election issue? See, it's the only answer we are giving to those 400 million people is more growth and you'll be out of poverty. We're not talking about a decent standard of living or a human development index. For God's sake, India is behind Sri Lanka and Bhutan on human development index, right? With all the might that we talk about. So we are not focusing on the right paradigm. Growth is not bad unless, as long as it's pulling people out of poverty and it's giving them a better standard of living and dignity. But if it only means I pull you out of where you live and put you in another big city and give you a car because of that, but 10 more people will be left behind because they don't have the necessary skills to come here, or they did not get the money to be paid for the land that they sold off as compensation to a big project, then that's not really growth that I'm talking about.
Why don't you weigh in on this? And I urge you to put on your board of directors for a corporation hat on. I understand where the environmentalists, if I may call you that, are coming from, but is it not an ugly reality? Growth is the only metric that we can see which possibly can pull people out of poverty, and its importance to us is way, way higher than an importance to a developed country.
I think that's undeniable, but the fact of the matter is growth with equity. What is happening is that there is tremendous growth, this 7.5% GDP growth, of which 7% will go to the top 0.1% of the population. So you read in the papers a few days ago, the 62 richest people in the world, that wealth is equal to the wealth of the 3.5 billion poorest people. So this is what growth has resulted in. So that's not the kind of growth which will ever get these 400 million out.
Right.
Can I also come back to this renewable thing? I'm a retired auditor, so you can take my numbers with a pinch of salt. But I did a calculation that if in the year 2050, by which time the Indian population is expected to be 160 crores or thereabouts, we only had renewable energy at the level at which Malaysia today consumes power. You know, I'm not looking to American levels. Ours is about 600 units per capita. Malaysia is about 3,800 units per capita. We would need the entire state of Punjab, 50,000 square kilometers, to be nothing but wind farms and solar fields.
Which is not possible.
Which is not possible. And if we are aspiring to an American level, the entire state of Orissa, 1.5 lakh square kilometers, would have to be nothing but wind farms and solar fields. Of course, the wind should blow, but I'm leaving that out. Let's assume the wind blows everywhere. So now that is with the current level of technology. In 35 years, maybe technology will advance. But it's like the fuel cell. Nearly 200 years ago, there was a French scientist who said, a fuel cell is something you take water, split the thing into hydrogen and oxygen, combust the hydrogen and oxygen and get electricity. In the combustion, the hydrogen and oxygen will again combine and give you water. So input water, output water, and electricity. What an amazing thing. And for 200 years, people have been trying to invent this. So I know both in Thermax and Tata Power, from time to time, they claim, we have invented the fuel cell. So I said, what? Water input, water output. Embarrassed, they say, no, nothing like that. So you know, this technology thing is a bit of a chimera that is waved in front of us.
Sure.
If I look at the efficiencies that have improved in solar film or in wind in the last 20 years or so, because it wasn't there before that, and if I just extrapolate in a straight line, I doubt we will get the kind of thing which will make us have much less than Punjab. So we'll have to have alternative methods.
Sorry,
No, I'm sorry, because you know, we're just coming down to, again, environmentalists being seen as anti-growth, and we need to demolish this stereotype. I am not saying don't give electricity to the poor. I'm not saying let's not grow. I am saying, are we growing to give electricity to the poor, or are we using those thermal power plants to support our carbon-intensive lifestyles in the city? That's what I have a problem with. So I am not saying let's go back to, let's get rid of our cars and let's sit in horses and let's live in mud huts. I'm not saying that.
The horses also give out a lot of greenhouse gases from the rear end.
See, I think the entire question revolves around what has been said, like achieving this balance, as I said, or nature. Let us be practical. Is it really possible? I think the struggle has gone on in many countries. See, achieving a balance between growth and equity, between growth and development and environment. This is the biggest question. Let me ask you one question. Now, something was said about starting new industry, the environmental laws raised a point. Now, how many of you see soon after your graduation you look out for jobs? Job creation, employment is one of the most important objectives of an individual. If you are offered a job in an industry and you know that's going to be a polluting industry, will you accept the job, or will you say no, that causes pollution?
How many will accept the job?
Please raise your hands.
Be honest. Okay, that's just about 10%.
For jobs are against jobs.
No, they're saying they won't accept the job. That's a huge conscience.
So that is it. So it's conscience. I mean, it's not easy to decide. Slowly, one raises here, one raises there.
I don't believe them.
You don't believe them.
I think they'll pick up the job.
Jobs. I mean, also that is an extremely difficult question to answer. So you need industry. You environmental laws. Let me say one thing about environmental laws. See, we had framed perhaps one of the most rigorous environmental laws in any country. Let me tell you that. Some Americans have come and said yours is much more difficult.
In which case we have the most
efficient. That is again the question about implementation.
No, but I must say, in which case, by the data that Bahar has shared, we have the most cutting edge industry in the world, because if we have the most stringent environmental laws and a 95% rate of clearance, then our industry is the cleanest in the universe.
See, that is one reason why we are not able to enforce the laws. See, corruption and all may be part of it, I agree. But from looking at from the point of view of a person who wants to follow the laws, not only environmental laws, many other laws in India, sometimes, the laws themselves make it difficult for you to follow it. I mean, if you're looking at the common relating to construction in cities, etc. and all that, we can debate this for long. So it is necessary to rationalize many laws, not merely the environmental laws, so that life becomes easier, development is possible. But at the same time, I agree, I mean, there are issues relating to environment which need to be kept in view. That's why regulatory bodies are there. Now, for instance, the National Green Tribunal that has been set up.
Right.
See, so Green Tribunal does come in and put some checks. I mean, whether all regulatory authorities are functioning as they should and all, that's a different area altogether. But policy-wise, there are mechanisms to ensure that, the green part or the environmental laws are protected.
Okay, before you come in, Anoop, I wanted a question. You work in advocacy and policy, advisory role. You work with the private sector and the government? With both?
Both, yeah.
From your experience, and I'm not saying your experience as a representative across the country, which part, is it the private sector or is it the government, is more in tune with the need to take environment degradation seriously when it comes to forming policy which would make growth happen? Who do you see as more open to the idea?
Right, it's a good question. See, come back to the Paris example, the deal happened and everybody was celebrating. When I say everybody, the leaders of the various countries and the representatives, the industry was looking at them like, why are they celebrating? We are already on a roll, the renewable energy sector was anyways growing by leaps and bounds. And so they said, we were not waiting for the politicians or the government to tell us what needs to be done. The economics was speaking out loud, and the prices had already fallen down by 80% in the past 5 years. The industry was expanding like mad. So the answer is the private sector is way ahead to be in line with the times. And the government keeps on talking about various things, and they are so scared of taking bold steps. It's not funny. But to come to think of it, let me just also wrap up by this saying that as we have a saying in Hindi, Jaisi Praja Vaisa Raja. Okay. I don't know how many of you understand it, but we are as youth just as we are impatient to, for example, to have our own startup, get out of college, or not even get out of college, have our own startup while we are in college, we don't see the impatience with respect to our politicians. We are accepting them decades after decades, the way they are operating and running the country. And once in a while, this one gem of a politician would probably come through, and we'd start worshipping him or her like anything. But more or less, we've set the bar
We are too
quite
forgiving
low.
for politics.
We
Okay.
have set the bar quite low, and it was very much evident in even in Paris. We thought the developing nations would go all berserk and guns blazing, and they will take the developed country to task because this is the moment. And
We didn't. Although,
happen.
the Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar has sent you a message for your festival, and I saw the message. He's on a video conference. And he has spoken about COP21 in Paris, and he has actually said that we lost, the developing countries lost. And I was quite surprised when he said that, because the way some of the media played it was that we had won some huge achievement. So on that, I'm not sure whether the government is claiming victory or not, because at that time they were claiming victory, and now the Environment Minister is saying they did not. But, sir, coming to you, the points that have been made from this side about there not being enough happening from point of view of research or indigenous research, and you said that there's lack of professionalism. That is there across in politics. We don't have great politicians. That is there in the private sector, like you said, Jaisi Raja, Vaisi Praja. So, am I to take your answer as a sense of inevitability कि हम तो ऐसे ही हैं and nothing can come of it, that mediocrity is a part of us? Like, the government is not going to change that much. The private sector will do what profit expects them to do. Can't we expect change to come from scientists, because they are the ones who always push the barrier? They go to the final frontier. Do you think the attitude change we're looking for can come from science if it's not coming from the market or from politics?
My opinion is, as you correctly told, is attitude change. Somehow we feel that among industries, even government, they feel that the science has not contributed much. They are looking into some sort of a very short-term benefit. When you talk about energy, or when you talk about the growth rate, looking into a short span is not all the more important. We have to give a long-term vision on those aspects. Today, I have got a correlation I can show you. Depends upon the growth of science. We see any country, developed countries, the kind of development science can be correlatable to the growth rate of the country. I can tell you. Without the introduction of science, adequate research, is very difficult to realize a sustainable growth rate today. I can tell very much. We are all looking into a short-term things, empirical correlations, who will give readily and who is growing. But this is not the case. We have to look into that. These technologies are small technology, what we are talking. Even I can say today, renewable energy, what we are talking, as really I compliment your views, it cannot meet all the requirements. Absolutely. We need only the maybe judicious choice of some small mix should be there.
Sure.
We have to think of energy like how to split the water, how to have a fusion energy, how to have a renewable energy can couple with the bigger source of energy and carbon free. That means a clean coal technology.
And what better place to expect that than an engineering college? We're expecting the fuel cell to come from one of you that can turn water into energy. I'd like closing comments. We're out of time. So starting from the left, could you give me a closing comment, a minute each, where you see this headed?
I think my closing comment, I'll just repeat 2 points I made. It is within us to deal with this problem. Trying to get other countries to behave better is not going to get us anywhere. Each of you must consume less.
No, we're not doing questions.
And if you see that there are corporations that are behaving in an improper manner, they are only focused on profit, just write a letter to their head office addressed to their board saying, demonstrate how you balance the interests of your different stakeholders in this context. These are the two things I would request you in the audience to take away. Thank you.
Dr. Ravindra, closing comments?
My final comment would be that I think we need to look for an alternative approach to development. I think if, in a way, summarizing everything that has been said, our focus on GDP, gross development product. Now, should that be the focus of government policy, of all our economic development, etc.? So instead of gross domestic product, GDP, which goes on emphasizing economic growth, can we have an alternative concept of course, Bhutan, they said gross national happiness, GNP. But a new one that has come up is that it is gross national progress, GNP. It's not product, which measures only the economic output. So progress would mean economic progress, social progress, and particularly social because education and health. This is where India has failed. We never focused on the importance of primary education and primary health care in the years soon after independence. And today in HDI, we are way below even some of the developing countries, even in some indices in compared to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. So that should include social, economic, social, and environmental progress, environmental protection. If we are able to develop this new concept of development and measure progress along these lines, I am sure even the budgets, instead of talking only about today's newspapers, only growth,
Right.
economic survey. I never found in the environment, etc., at least in the newspapers.
The change of
So
paradigm.
all these things should get reflected in this, then only we will be able to whether combat climate change, pull people out of poverty, provide the basic necessities. At the same time, look at developing modern technology, new concept, like when you say smart cities, for instance. The idea behind smart cities is that you try to utilize modern technology, especially ICT, to find solutions for urban problems, about waste management, water management, keeping your roads, etc., safety. A tremendous use of ICT is possible in all this to make our living much better. So I think an integrated concept has to be developed in order to, provide a vision for India, which is providing, basic standard of life to all and achieving modern progress so that we achieve our rightful place in the Committee of Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Anoop?
See, I would say that instead of growth or all the things that have been put on us, look for a decent standard of living, look for a human development index and all those things which we already talked about. And that includes biodiversity, by the way. It includes wildlife. You have to preserve that. It includes clean air. It includes health. It does not include lifestyle diseases, all sort of things, okay? So that's, of course, which should be guiding you. But what I really want to say is the solutions are there. You know what is right. Just get restless, get impatient. Don't wait for anyone else to come and tell you or give you or show you a way. Just get restless and you'll find how to get there. I think that's what I've seen working with anyone who's made it big in life, at least in this pathway.
Right. Thanks. Bahar?
My mic is shut. Okay. No. I think I'll just say that I'm often asked how can individuals contribute to the environment, and I just say you have two tools to do that. One as a consumer and the second as a voter. So don't vote for governments and politicians that pollute. Don't buy products that pollute. It's very simple. And I think governments and industry, just by these two tools, they'll change the way they do business.
Right, Doctor.
In my opinion, that we should not, look in a narrow manner that only renewable energy can today has to be given high emphasis. We ought to give emphasis in energy mix, in my opinion, because Indian context, if you see the spread of the resources available, a judicious choice of energy sources are required, options are required, in which I feel that certain areas our research input is very less. Even wind energy we see, even now we are importing blades from abroad. So the R&D input, research input for renewable energy is very little. So we have to enhance the R&D input for renewable energy, and the R&D output or outcome of R&D or spin-off technology from space, communication industry as well as nuclear industry today, many fields we are marching toward leadership. A little bend of mind, if you think of the technology developments, what happened nuclear, space, and as well as in a communication industry, if you put some of its spin-off to the renewable energy, and if you have a judicious mix of these energies in a short term, over the period, we develop some advances, high advances, take into account our several Indian students and we are now human resource wise, India is very, very good. Even one day will come, India will supply manpower to entire world. And our research should be focused on industrial needs. And we have to interact with the industries and what they need today, what they need tomorrow, in long run what they need. We should have a good synthesis, and a meeting should be held with among stockholders, and they should assign the job according to the individual talents and interests. And considering the high level institute, medium level institutes, and the normal technical level institutes, we should appropriate some sort of a curriculum such a manner that we should have development in all the three phases: immediate needs, medium, near future, and long future.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. And thank you all. I hope you took away something from that discussion which you will use, and since you're all, I guess most of you are engineering students, the only people who will impact the world more than philosophers are scientists. So I hope many of you have been inspired to do some work in science to find solutions to problems that have been discussed here. Thank you for being a patient audience. And we thought there'd be a question answer, but we decided against it because earlier I thought it'd be just 100, 200 strong audience. I didn't know it was such a large audience, which is why we thought a question answer would be unmanageable. But I hope you got some answers here. Thank you all. Thank you to the panel. You've been most helpful and most enlightening.
Thank you to the moderator.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that, click up here to support us and down here to subscribe. Be sure to check out our older episodes and the other stuff we do, like Can You Take It, I Agree, panel discussions, comics and animations, and much, much more.